Hi, my name is Nick Rains. I shoot mostly documentary and travel work, as well as being a Leica Academy instructor here in Australia. Regardless of the camera you use, from a professional grade camera like this Leica SL or a compact camera like a Deluxe, the exposure is always controlled using various combinations of shutter speeds and apertures. It's fairly obvious. But there is, of course, another way to control the exposure, and that's to actually reduce the amount of light coming into the lens in the first place before we choose our exposure settings. Now, why would we want to do that? Well, it's like this. Right now, there is a certain amount of light falling on me, and I only have so many aperture settings that I can use. Depending on the lens or camera, somewhere between f2.8 and f22 would be usual. But that's only 7 different apertures and therefore 7 different shutter speeds to choose from. But what if I wanted to use a combination outside that range? What if I wanted to use a long exposure in really bright light? That's where neutral density filters come in, like this one from Leica. They physically reduce the light coming into the lens, a bit like sunglasses, and you can see how dark this is, but without altering the color in any way. Now, there are 2 common reasons for doing this. Firstly, to force a longer exposure to deliberately blur a moving subject when there is too much light to get a long shutter speed normally. This is great for seascapes, of course, or to blur moving clouds. If I use this 4-stop ND filter, which is also known as an ND16, I can change the shutter speed from, say, a 30th of a second to half a second without changing the aperture or the ISO. The difference in blur between these 2 shutter speeds is considerable. I could even stack 2 filters together and end up with an 8-second exposure. You can also use NDs to get a wider aperture than would normally be possible in bright conditions. On a bright sunny day, if you wanted to shoot a 50mm Noctilux wide open at f/0.95 to get a classic out of focus background, you'd have to use a shutter speed of between 1/8000th and 1/16,000th of a second. Impossible on most cameras. Add the 4-stop ND and about a 2,000th of a second would work fine. And for video shooters, this is even more critical, because video is often shot at much lower shutter speeds to get that cinematic smoothness between frames, and a 50th of a second is not uncommon. So if you want to shoot video and get that classic look, you'll absolutely need ND filters to control the light.